so much for coming out. Nice to see you. We'll have you the last time.
Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to Gregory Elementary School in Trenton, and welcome to Governor Murphy's press conference. But before we begin, I would like to just give some greetings and shout outs to our dignitaries in the standing behind me. We have a county executive, Brian Hughes. Senator Shirley Turner. Trenton Mayor-elect Reed Gussiora. And my college buddy and pal, Assemblywoman Verlina Reynolds Jackson. Ewing Mayor Bert Steinman. Trenton Councilwoman-elect Kathy McBride. Trenton Council-elect Jarrell Buckley. Blakely, I apologize, Blakely. Hopewell Borough Mayor Paul Anzano. Trenton Superintendent and my colleague, Fred McDowell. The principal of this great elementary school, Mike Rosenberg. Friendship Baptist Church Pastor John Taylor. Trenton Councilman Duncan Harrison, and my colleague, New Jersey Treasurer Liz Moyer. And there are many other Trenton supporters in the audience. If I haven't mentioned you, charge it to my eyesight and not my heart. Thank you for being here today. Over the past couple of months, I participated with the Department of Education in a 21-county tour. During this time, I met thousands of school leaders, parents, students, and witnessed firsthand the results of failed attempts to provide sustained and predictable investments in education over the last 8 years. My visits have shown me that New Jersey educators and students continue to achieve despite budget shortfalls and inadequate infrastructure. This is unsustainable, and if we were to keep New Jersey schools as one of the strongest educational systems in the country, our students deserve a sustainable, reliable, and continuous school funding formula. Governor Murphy has put forward a thoughtful and workable compromise that will help move our state forward. This includes a plan to provide sustained and predictable funding to our schools, and this is a core value that we all share. But for these investments to be a reality, we must have a budget built on sustainable, reliable, and real revenues. No short-term gimmicks, no games. As a former school administrator, I know how difficult it is to think about long-term plans when you don't know if the state will live up to its funding promises. Short-term planning isn't good for our students, and short-term fixes aren't good for our state budget. Over the last several weeks and months, the governor has worked hard to successfully fulfill his promise to modernize the school formula. He has accomplished this by working in collaboration with the legislature. The results provide a roadmap for getting New Jersey school funding back on track. However, without long-term and sustainable revenue, this plan will end up like all failed attempts we've seen in the past. We cannot have a stronger and fairer New Jersey that we all want unless we make these long-term investments in our educational system. These investments translate into very tangible programs for New Jersey students. Pre-K education that provide early access for our students to achieve academic success. Career and technical education courses preparing our students to be successful in high school and after high school. Science, technology, engineering, and math courses so our students can compete in a global market. As I've said many times, New Jersey is very fortunate to have a governor who is a strong believer in our public school system and the role they play in drawing business, industry, and families to New Jersey. He knows that schools, and he's said this time and time again, can be an economic engine for corporate, academic, and residential development. People move here, businesses move here and invest here because of the world-class educational system that we have in the great state of New Jersey. The governor also mentioned this, and I agree with him. We have a moral imperative to provide our students access to high-quality education, and the time to do that is now. No one wants a shutdown. Each of us know that choosing the hard right over the easy wrong is the only way to achieve a brighter future. We must take this opportunity. This is our time to invest in our students, and this is our governor. Thank you.
I remember as if it were yesterday meeting Lamont in Asbury Park, where I got a hard hat from you, because that was your thing. It still is your thing. So thank you, Lamont, for saying that. To all the distinguished folks who are with me today and with us, I want to thank you all for being here at the Gregory School this morning. I also want to, I'm not sure if the Trenton Education Association got their proper shout out, but I want to give a big shout out to them and to educators, not just here in the capital city, but up and down the state. I don't know where we'd be without you. I'm looking up the 6 pillars of character. I'm not sure this is unique. Where's our principal? Where are you, sir? I saw you out here somewhere. Trustworthiness, respect, responsibility, fairness, caring, and citizenship. Those ought to be the pillars that we apply to everything we do in the state of New Jersey. But again, it's a real honor to be in this great school in the capital city today with such a distinguished lineup. And Lamont, thank you for your very kind words and for your work day in and day out as the Commissioner of Education in this great state. We're all here because we know that to succeed, Trenton's school children and educators need a budget that believes in them and invests in them. At first glance, the budget sitting on my desk appears to do both. With an increase of about $11.5 million, which is real money, it would prove our commitment to and our faith in the children here, not just at the Gregory School, but around the entire capital city. Right? I would like nothing more than to sign that budget and turn this promise for next year into a guarantee. Unfortunately, right now, I cannot do that. The budget that is on my desk is not backed by the sustainable revenues necessary to ensure the funding needed to help Trenton kids succeed this school year, let alone future years. And I will not make a short-term or one-time only investment in the kids here or kids anywhere in New Jersey. We must be in this for the long haul. And without that long-term funding source, or even an agreement on a way forward, that investment is at risk. I've been clear in my belief that the best way to do this is by asking the very wealthiest, the millionaires who did just fine under Chris Christie and who are doing even better under Donald Trump, to pay a little bit more in income taxes so we can invest in public education. This is not a radical idea. It is supported by a wide majority of New Jerseyans of every political stripe. They recognize that tax fairness is the best way forward. But some in the Trenton ecosystem continue to play games and toss Hail Mary passes from the State House to see if maybe just one could land in the end zone. So far, they've all been short. I'm not, for example, open to giving millionaires, on the one hand, another free pass so we can tax a family's long-awaited week's vacation at the Jersey Shore. I'm willing to compromise, and that's an important point. I'd like folks to think of me as reasonable and resolved. Pushed to have to line item veto this funding to ensure a budget that is in balance. The kids here deserve that funding, period. But unless we get our fiscal house in order and stop paying for tomorrow through games and gimmicks, those will be my only options. Just this week, The Trenton literacy movement celebrated the great success that they have had over the past year through their $100,000 contribution and efforts to help students learn to love to read. I would love nothing more than to keep that progress going through a long-term partnership with the state, cemented by strong annual funding. When I visit a school, I only want to be able to bring good news, and I hope that soon I will. But let me be very clear at the same time. Time is running out. We have a workable formula for a framework, rather, for a compromise on the table that brings together ideas and concepts that have been discussed from all parties, by the way, and fleshed out over weeks and months, and in the case of the millionaire's tax, even years. We've telegraphed this and undoing the sales tax gimmick for months and months, and in some cases, years. And now is not the time for Hail Marys. It is the time for us to run the play that we said we would run and to score. Legislators have a choice, and it's a particular treat that several are with us today, Senator Turner in particular, Verlina Reynolds-Jackson in the Assembly, and Reed Gusciora in your final days in the Assembly. It's a particular honor to have you here. Legislators have a choice. We can, on the one hand, build the state's future on a foundation of sound policy and smart investments, or bet it on gimmicks and wishful thinking. I know the choice that New Jersey wants them and us to make, and I'll do whatever I can to help them make it. So thank you for hearing me out. We'll take a few questions in a couple of minutes, but before I do, I want to ask two more folks to come on up and say a few words. I remember the second I met Brian Hughes. It was in that always empty restaurant at the hotel that's now closed, and I hope under Reed's leadership at Mayor that hotel can reopen and that the restaurant be filled again. But Brian, Mr. County Executive, thank you for your leadership, your friendship, your support, and for being here today. We'd love to have you spend a few words.
Thank you very much.
Thank you,
Thank you, Governor. From Hopewell to Hamilton, from Princeton to Trenton, New Jersey and Mercer County deserve and have great schools. We're looking for great schools throughout the state of New Jersey to have stable, long-term funding sources so they can move forward together and make sure that year after year we can show the working community that we mean business in New Jersey. We take our kids and we put our kids first and our education first. That's what people are talking about. They're talking about things in Washington and who the next Chief Justice is going to be and all sorts of things. But people in my district, people in Mercer County are talking about jobs, they're talking about education, they're talking about the aspirations of their children and where they're going to come from year after year after year. So I thank the governor for his long-term support of education and make sure we have a funding source that we can rely on. Thank you very much, Governor.
It is another treat. One more person who I'd like to ask to say a few words. Currently an Assemblyman, Mayor-elect of Trenton. Again, I remember the day I met him. I remember going to his Oktoberfest celebration because he knew I had a little bit of German interest in me. So please help me welcome Mayor-elect Assemblyman Reed Gusciora.
Thank you, Governor Murphy. I'll be hanging with you until the end. I probably will run over to City Hall at 11:59, so I'll stand by ready to help support a good budget and a fair budget process. But on behalf of the 12,000 Trenton school students, I want to welcome you to Trenton, 20% of which are special needs. So we understand that we take the budget process seriously and we rely on state funding. We want to thank you for the increase in school funding. It will go to good use. This is a school system that dates back before Welcome Back, Mr. Cotter. And we have old infrastructure that we need to keep. And the budget process with the legislature shouldn't be up the down staircase. but should be in the same direction. I know when I have counsel with Kathy and Jarrell and even Duncan, we're all on the same page that we want what's best for the residents of the city of Trenton, and I know you want what's for the best of the residents of New Jersey. So we support you in your efforts. We hope that there is a budget compromise or something that works for the citizens, but most importantly for the school kids of Trenton who need the resources. We can't afford to have a shutdown. We want to make sure that we have a great educational foundation for all our kids. So thanks so much for coming.
Thanks, Bill. Great to be back. I was saying to a couple of councilmen-elect, and I'd say this to Reed and Brian and Shirley and others, we were together on a pretty sad day on Father's Day after an awful shooting event here. And again, I want to give a big shout out to the first responders of the Trenton Police Department who reacted so bravely that night. It's a nice, much nicer moment to be back in a school that's well, even though it's summer, has reeks of kids and education. So thank you all again, each and every one of you, for being here today. We'll take a few questions before we break, please.
Governor, even if there, forgive me if this has been mentioned already, even if there is the smallest increase in sales tax in the final budget, will the 23-cent gas tax increase remain in place, or will it go away as initially promised?
It won't go away, but there's a very easy way to twin those two actions. And I'll leave it to the experts in the legislature who can walk you through that afterward. But those two events can be decoupled. Please.
The rental proposal has two different components to it, and one component of it is to increase the really transfer fee on properties worth more than $1 million. So I know you're opposed to the initial part, setting the sales tax, but what about that other second half? We generate about $110 million.
Yeah, I don't get as wait a minute as I do about the shore rental. And I didn't, this is not something I've thought months about, so you'll forgive me. I saw this come up yesterday in the press conference, and we asked for and got a little bit more color underneath it. Let me start with the shore rental piece. Again, I said I was open-minded to ideas, so the fact that ideas are coming up that I may not agree with, the fact that they're coming up is not a bad thing, but and that's a good thing. But this idea, to me, it just doesn't make sense at almost any level. I mean, you've got the Jersey Shore on the one hand, and you've got millionaires on the other hand. And Sheila Oliver was telling me a story about a former staffer of hers. They said the one thing her family looked forward to all year long was that 1 week that they would rent a little house in Wildwood. And that was the thing that they were focused on. And the notion that, you'd have one less night in the boardwalk, one less, it just doesn't make any sense. That's why I grew up. We used to go to this house called the Dickey, named after the owner, Leon Dickey. 1 week a summer, probably smaller than the size of that office. That's the reality of the Jersey Shore. So I just don't get it. The real estate transfer fee is less visceral, but if you speak to folks in this state, and by the way, it applies to houses, I believe, of a certain worth, right? So it's getting into that same realm of a wealthy individual. If you when we've been speaking to folks about this for years, if you sort of look at things like an estate tax, property tax burden, income tax, the fact of the matter is the property tax burden is the bone that sticks in the throats of everybody who owns a home in this state. And so, including folks who may own a home that's now got some consequential wealth. And by the way, that includes homes that were bought maybe by your parents 50 years ago. And the value of that home has increased dramatically over that period of time. So it wasn't like you were rolling in cash when you went out and you bought the house. And so I would say, listen, we've already presented a budget that has historic direct property tax relief in it. Huge increase in public education funding. On average, a property tax bill in the state, 53% of the bill is public education. Secondly, we're raising the ceiling on the deductibility on state taxes for property taxes from $10,000 up to $15,000. That brings in another 540,000, I think, property taxpayers. That's a big deal. And thirdly, I want to give Speaker Coughlin a shout out for this. He's been passionate, and I've always said if we can find the sustainable revenue, count me in to put a big chunk back on the homestead rebate bucket. So you look at those three things taken together, never mind what we're doing outside of the budget, we're making real progress in putting forward real plans and money behind it to crack the back of the property tax prices. So anything that sort of cuts back against that and makes it more expensive to be here, my reaction isn't as visceral as the shore rental, because that's a straight shot to the gut of the middle class, but it is not furthering us in the direction we want to go. Michael.
So, two questions. First of all, in the midst of this arm wrestling match between you and Steve Sweeney,
Who do you think's going to win that, man? Don't put me up against an iron worker, man.
he proposed or floated the idea within the past few days of taking the power to certify revenue away from governors and putting it in the hands of the Treasury Department, OLS, and some third body. To what extent would you say that was a shot across your bow?
Could I get your second question first?
Yeah, are you meeting with him or anyone?
So we will be meeting. We're trying to figure out a time to do that. We also...
Just the two of you, or?
No, we'll do this in the legislative leadership group that we've been doing, and that's actually been pretty productive. As I mentioned, the meetings continue to be professional, even where we agree to disagree. These are professional and I think productive. We don't have a deal yet, but yeah, I saw that. I mean, I don't take it personally. It's a little bit like having the pitcher, the catcher, the batter, and the umpire go off to the side after each pitch to determine whether it's a ball or a strike. The way it works now seems to me to be working just fine across both sides of the aisle. I have to say, and by the way, this is not OLS is filled with very strong and good people who do a good job. Treasury and OMB are outstanding folks. But that's the way it's been done, and I think the way it should continue to be done. Among other things, they've got access to data that other folks don't have. So Treasury and OMB, for instance, have the actual tax rolls. So an OLS estimate, with the best of intentions, doesn't have all the facts that these folks have.
Considering where we are now, how this has progressed, do you think that egos maybe are trumping debates, policy debates?
I can say mine isn't. You'll have to ask others, but I can guarantee you mine is not. I feel like we got elected by over 2 touchdowns with a very clear mandate to rebuild the middle class and rekindle the dreams of those as I was growing up, looking up, trying to get in one day to the middle class, and that the wealthiest, the big corporations, the gimmicks, the wealthiest and the biggest corporations needed to pay their fair share and do smart tax policy, and the gimmicks needed to be undone. There's no ego at all in this for me. Actually, Dustin, I hit it up first. I apologize.
When midnight, June 30th comes, there's no deal. You don't necessarily have to order a state shutdown. Can you talk about what considerations you might take to trigger a state shutdown, make that decision, or what's the viability for you to just sort of keep the clock going, so to speak?
So we're not taking anything off the table, and we're meeting intensively. Some of you, I think you were there, as I recall this morning, you saw that we had a cabinet meeting to sort of go over the whole range of actions. So we've taken nothing off the table, and I want to, I'm in this interesting position. I don't want the state to shut down, and I want to be the guy that protected the investments, that $11.5 million into the kids, increase into the kids' education, and in Trenton, in the education budget. I'm prepared to fight and go down with the ship on behalf of those programs, but everything has to be on the table, and I don't know that we've got if we had a game plan, I promise you I'd tell you what it was. We're wargaming a whole series of different scenarios, but I'm still optimistic. We're still trying to get a deal done. I think the words that I used earlier apply. We are resolved. We know why we got elected. We know why we're here. But we're also reasonable. And I think that compromise you saw us put out a couple of nights ago, I think that's a very fair framework. And inside of that mix somewhere, I think there's a deal to be had. Sorry, yeah, hold on, Paul. Paul, you slipped on your title today. Now, you took a couple of shots at me in your headline today.
I did.
Yeah, but I still enjoy reading it.
But anyhow, last week you said you were going to veto the bill.
Yep.
So so far it hasn't been vetoed. Are you going to, if you don't get a settlement, are you going to veto it by Saturday night?
That's one of the options on the table. So that's one of the things that's still available to us. I said I would veto it, but I didn't say when. And so that's still an option on the table.
Also, have you ever seen the movie Thelma and Louise?
You know, you come into events like this, and you expect a lot of things to come up that you're sort of dealing with. Thelma and Louise was not on my list of things to expect to come up here. I'm going to come back to you on that.
You use the word veto, but more specifically line item veto, which makes things a lot more complicated. Because in theory, America shut down.
All still on the table, Charlie.
Is that, so that's still?
Absolutely.
So you're talking about shutdown on one hand, but
I can't help. Yeah, I can't help but talk about shutdown. I'm not trying to get everyone's hair on fire, but there are other, as I said, there are different alternatives, and we're trying to figure out the one that works the best to achieve the result that we got sent here to do. Brent. Charlie, you're getting this bad habit, you know. You're like Peter Falk in Columbo, okay? You know what I'm saying? I'm dating myself. Yeah, just one more thing. You saw that, right?
Have you consulted Governor Corzine about his experience? Because he brought the state to this brink. He forced the state, he led a shutdown that came out. He survived that.
I saw Governor Corzine socially not too long ago, but I've not consulted with him on this, nor have I consulted with the South Korean soccer team's #1 fan, Governor Christie. Brent. Just want to make sure you're paying attention out there, everybody.
One was the Dickey in New Jersey.
It was in Marshfield, Massachusetts.
Right, that's just the lead out. But two, does the government have to shut down, even if you reach an agreement today? Like, it would have to sit on the budget would not go immediately into effect. You'd have to wait.
If we reach an agreement, believe me, we're going to lay across the tracks to keep the government open. But we're not going to sign any agreement. We want to be a party, and again, resolved but reasonable. I think we'll put out a nice framework in which all parties can sort of find some common ground. That's something that we absolutely would sign our name to, and if we do, and everyone's acting in good faith, we'll do everything we can to keep it open. Same question as usual, or? Okay. No, I'm happy to go with two.
So when did you first tell legislators about your views on the rental tax?
When did I first tell legislators my what?
Your view on
We haven't met yet. We haven't met yet, no. We've had some bilateral conversations, as we do every single day with folks, but I haven't had a forum in which to say that. Because we were going to have a meeting, by the way, yesterday, right after the Senate President's press conference, and we said, listen, no emotion here. We just heard a bunch of stuff. We need to understand what the math is associated with that. So we've not now met since then. So
it also seems to me that both sides are increasingly negotiating in public. Do you have any concerns about that sort of practice?
no, I think we've got very good conversations going on in private, and I'm not a big in the public eye. I'm just happened to be. We had this event here today, and people have asked me the question on where I stand on that. And I feel like I owe it to you, Brian.
Governor, follow up on that. The David Wildstein countdown clock is now at about 2 days and 10 hours or something like that on his website. But there doesn't seem.
I've actually not been on that website. I apologize. So thank you for giving me that heads up. Okay.
Just in case you lose track of time. But I'm wondering, is there a sense of urgency here now with just
Sure, there is.
over 2 days?
Sure.
We see the Senate President out in Atlantic City today touting about casinos being open and going to Stockton University and all that.
By the way, I had wanted to be there for those openings today as well. This is a big day for Atlantic City. We got to make sure, is there a sense of urgency? Yeah, we called a cabinet meeting this morning. We're trying to figure out all the levers that we need to be looking at. So I can't speak for others, but from ourselves, we want to get something done here. And if we don't, we have to be as responsible as possible. Again, I want to protect the investments that we are trying to make together, and I'll go down with the ship fighting for those investments. A couple more here, please.
Are you surprised? Would you have thought there'd be more cooperation to be coming to June 28th and there's still no budget deal? I think when you talk to people on the street, that's surprising to them that it's always coming down to almost a shutdown.
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm not surprised because this is the legacy of the way people have done business in this town. And I've said this I'll get off the soccer for a minute. Chris Christie's no longer the governor, but his legacy lives on in terms of the horse trading and the gimmicks and the Band-Aids. And no, we're not, I didn't come here for that. And I'm not trying to be holier than thou, by the way. I understand this is politics, and I understand you have to find common ground, and that's cool. I get that, and I think we've presented a framework which speaks directly to that. But the 9 million folks who are out there watching, scratching their head, deserve better than they've gotten, and that's what we're trying our best to do. Does this relate to your own personal rental, or not?
Not directly.
Okay.
There's already at the shore, if you get a hotel room, there's an occupancy tax. In some cities, you can add on an extra fee, like in Atlantic City or Wildwood. If you do the Airbnb tax, when you rent at the beach through Airbnb, you'll pay a tax, but you'll still not pay a tax if you have the means to rent a house for the week. Is there a fairness issue where lower and middle class people have to stay in hotels, get taxed? Millennials who might use Airbnb get taxed, but families that have the means to rent a house for a week don't get taxed?
There may well be between those groups of folks you've slotted up, but then you get millionaires sitting over here, which is an obvious lever to pull that allows us a lot more flexibility in all of what you just talked about. One other thing that I haven't spoken about, and I should have mentioned, Sandy is only 5 years and 9 months under our belt, approximately. And so if you own a home on the shore and you want to rent it, you've got a lot of folks who are not yet back up to par. And those folks aren't owning hotel rooms, but they're owning homes. And I think we have to acknowledge that this economy is incredibly important to us. It's tagged at $44 billion. It's one of the economies that hasn't gotten busted other than the devastation that Sandy did as a natural disaster reality, sadly. And it's a huge middle-class reality in this state. And that's I want folks who have not yet asked, please.
Governor, I wanted to bounce off a question I asked. You really hear it. Governor, I wanted to bounce off the previous question. If, say, July 1st, at midnight,
The theoretical question of what we're doing exactly at midnight, if we don't have a deal that we believe stands up for the principles that Lamont and I and Brian and Reed have spoken to, that includes both sustainable investments and sustainable revenues that fund them with real teeth, that's unfortunately going to be one of the alternatives we're going to be staring at. Please.
With 4th of July next week, there's a lot of people going down the shore, renting houses. Are you concerned that potential government shutdown is going to impact that business?
I'm not happy about it, but again, those same people who are going down to the shore are the ones who need the investment in K through 12, pre-K, college affordability, NJ transit, while preserving the shore economy. I want to make sure those folks realize that we've got their back, and I'm not happily thinking about that as an alternative, but I can't avoid it because I've been elected to stand up on behalf of their interests. Please.
Yes, Governor. Certainly the education funding is important for the long haul, but wanted to ask you what your commitment is on municipal aid, specifically in the city of Trenton, which a lot of the elected officials here would say the city for years has not been getting the funding
Yeah.
it should be getting. The state has a lot of properties in the city of Trenton.
Yep.
Doesn't pay taxes on it.
Yep.
What is your commitment to giving the city more aid over not just this year, but the next 3 to 7 years?
So the same hotel room and restaurant where no one's ever in, where I met Brian, I met Mayor Jackson for the first time 4 years ago or more. And that's the conversation we had. The mayor, and I said this, Reed and I have had this conversation. Bert and I next door have had it, because Ewing is a sort of a first cousin in that reality, given a lot of the ratables from the state that are there and around Mercer County generally. But ground zero is really at Trenton. And I said to Eric, and I've said to these guys, you all need, more than any other community in the state, the governor to be your partner, right? So you got too many empty parking lots, too many buildings that don't give the ratables that this town desperately needs. And so I think Mayor Jackson would say we've had a good conceptual working relationship. His time is now measured in days. And I know Reed and I and the council will have that same relationship, that there's really nowhere else to turn if you're in the Trenton context, if you're looking for a partner, than the governor. Nick, do you have it?
Yeah, so you mentioned the millionaire's tax lot. I'm sure you saw Al Gore's tweet earlier saying that the residents of New Jersey need to get behind the millionaire's tax.
I did not see it, so that's a good sign. That's good.
And yesterday, Steve Sweeney said that he wouldn't accept any millionaire's tax. Can you see signing a budget that doesn't include the millionaire's tax? I know you say that you have all options on the table.
Yep.
But getting that out of the way, can you see yourself signing a budget?
It's hard for me to get my mind around that given how obvious it is. So one of the things, if you look at that framework that I put out there, if you read between the lines, I didn't start with the corporate business tax as an idea. I was glad to see the Senate President show that he was willing to extend that, whatever increase that we might consider. And so I've said all along, a longer fused at a lower rate is something that I think would be worthy of consideration. Millionaires, I'm happy to look at the edges of the level and rates, and everyone knows that, but that's sort of I think you could read between the lines in that piece. And then the sales tax, the specific thing I put in, you could put, there are a number of dimensions, but one of the things I put in was sort of phasing it in over a couple of years. And I think all of those, and tax amnesty, which I'm not wild about, because it sort of encourages not returning your library book on time. And I think you can't go to the well too frequently with that as an option. But if you look at that sort of, and you look at the sales tax judgment from the Supreme Court last week, the only thing that's come out of the Supreme Court for my taste recently that's been a good thing for New Jersey, you could see something in that neighborhood. So I wouldn't say categorically yes, no, or otherwise, but I think there's a deal in there. Just one or two more, and then we're going to have to go. Michael, thank you for your patience, everybody back here. Michael.
In past government shutdowns, state workers who were furloughed were ultimately paid for those days that they were forced outside of work. So if it comes to that, will you have to shut down at all?
No good answer to that. Haven't honestly thought about it. Charlie.
The Senate President's kind of alluded to this, but he has this group of experts examining different cost-cutting proposals. And one of them is possible further reductions in health and pension benefits of public employees.
Is this the one with merging small communities?
That's one of the options.
Right.
Has that come up in the discussions? Has he sought any expression or commitment from you to back some of that as part of the negotiation?
It hasn't been in the midst of a per se negotiation, but he's been very clear, to his credit. And by the way, he and I first sort of at least spiritually met after I did the famous report in 2005 on pension and health care benefits for state employees. But as per se part of the negotiations, we've had debates on scoring savings of one form or another. The biggest visible step that we've taken is we put a commission together, I think now 3 or 4 weeks ago at this point, to look at the opportunity to save meaningful money in the healthcare arena, both for the individual as well as for the state, while retaining the same, if not hopefully better, coverage. I think we all endorse that. In fact, we put someone on there that I met through Steve, who's an impressive guy. His name always escapes me, out of Washington. So I think, at least in the healthcare area, we think there's a holy grail. I'll speak for myself. I think there's that holy grail space where you save money for the individual, you save money for the state, and you get the individual with the same level of coverage, if not even better. That's something we have talked about.
Governor, there's a tweet on Twitter, I know you don't follow it personally, from Al Gore.
I just heard this.
Is this saying on the strong leadership of Governor Murphy and New Jersey's prime to become, that comes out of the blue to you, or?
It does, but he's a close friend of mine, so I'm happy to hear it. He's a very close friend, and I'm a big fan of his, particularly in the climate space, but a big fan generally. So I'm glad to get.
You had no idea that was coming?
I did not, no, but I'm thrilled. I'll take it. Just be anyone else who has not asked one, real quick, 1, 2, and then we got to go. Please, same question.
Yeah, do you have a number for me?
I don't. But please. I'd leave my answer in the same place that I answered with Nick. Those are to me, on the revenue side, the most obvious levers, and what combination that they get pulled at what level and to what degree. assume that I'm resolved but reasonable. I want to thank everybody for coming out. I particularly want to thank the principal, all the educators, everybody associated with this school, Gregory School, but also with this great capital city and the great county of Mercer. Thank you all so much for being with us today.